מה שישראל לאחרונה נמצא מתצו כמה עניינים. מה שרואה עוד, וגם משהו שעדיין משיח ליבו. אז הייתה משהו ומה ידיעתו.
עושים.
הכנראה שהיא מספיק, כי היום כבר כמה שעות בגיל עדיין ליבו, אבל יש עוד כמה שעות, אבל יש להשתדל גם היום, בצורה טובה. זה שמחה וטוב לבוא. אתה יודע שחסידים מקפידים שכל עניינים זה שמחה. בצורה טובה, הצלחה רבה.
All races and religions, that's America to me.
All of these men who founded Hollywood were born within a 500-mile radius of one another. And all of them wound up roughly within 15 miles of one another in Los Angeles. One could say that the American dream was really born in Eastern Europe.
Harry Warner, who with 3 of his brothers brought sound to the motion picture, was born in Poland.
Comes Jack Warner, youngest of the Warner clan, and then the senior member of the film-famed brothers.
Also from Poland was Samuel Goldwyn, born Goldfish. Although Goldwyn never ran a major studio, he was perhaps the biggest and best known of the independent Hollywood producers. Universal founder Carl Laemmle came from a small town in Germany. Louis B. Mayer, who gave us the glory years of the MGM studio, was born in a Russian Jewish village. William Fox and Paramount's Adolf Zucker were both born in Hungary. Fox's studio merged with 20th Century Pictures to form 20th Century Fox.
Here comes Adolf Zucker, the president of Paramount Pictures.
Zucker, known as the father of the feature-length film, spent his childhood in this Jewish village.
For the Jews of Eastern Europe, there were 3 ways to flee. The first was to stay where you were and participate in some Marxist or socialist movement where you could become part of a labor organization that would in turn create a great regime, a socialist regime in which Jews could be accepted as equals. A very small minority began to dream about Palestine. Very small numbers of people became Zionists. You needed a great deal of ideological dexterity to talk yourself into getting on a boat and going to Palestine at the turn of the century. The vast majority of Jews, 2 million out of 2.5 million, who left Eastern Europe to find their dream, went to America. The smart money was on America. It was the simple place where you could imagine the dream of Jews having both opportunity for tolerance and also economic security.
For Jews, this was a migration forever. They had no positive views of life in the old world. Many immigrants, in fact, talked about the last moment in Russia where they turn around and spit. In a way, we might even say that they actually became American, or they began the process of Americanization at the moment when they decided to leave, because they knew that there was no going back.
Among these immigrants were the future founders of the studios. They brought with them a new vision of America. Hollywood was a dream, dreamt by Jews. Hollywood's future founders quickly distinguished themselves as risk-takers and innovators. Adolf Zucker made his first fortune with the invention of a fox stole, with a clasp inside the fox's mouth.
The first moguls tended to come from various aspects of the sales business. Dry goods sales, Laemmle was a clothier, Goldwyn was a glove salesman, Adolf Zukor in furs, Louis Selznick in the diamond business. And as they approached the motion picture industry, they approached it not from an engineering point of view, not from technology or machinery, but from how they can distribute a product.
You really can't stress too much how pervasively Jewish the movie industry was in New York before World War I. Not that Jews were making movies or acting in movies, but there probably would not have been an extended Jewish family in New York at that time who did not have some relatives involved in some aspect of the movie industry, which was really a mom-and-pop industry of storefront theaters in not very elegant neighborhoods.
My dad was president of Paramount for almost 30 years. The way he got into the business was quite wonderful. My grandmother, who raised 8 children in 2 rooms above a fish and produce market in a Jewish ghetto in Chicago called Maxwell Street. She came rushing and said, Bonnie, you have to come here quickly. I have the most wonderful business. And she was going on and on and on. And she got him on a trolley car and took him to a kind of storefront Nickelodeon theater. And on the way there, she told him that this was the greatest business in the world because the people paid the money before they got the goods.
This is where a producer lives. Not just any producer, but one of the most famous of them all, Samuel Goldwyn, high up on one of Beverly's hills.
Good morning.
Well, here is Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Goldwyn. And do you mind if I call you Francis and Sam?
I'd like that very much.
Sam, I understand that while you're the boss in the studio, that there's
This is the boss here.
It's her house, isn't it?
Every bit of it.
Let's talk to Francis then. How long have you lived here?
Oh, it's so long. 25, 26 years.
Sam, how'd you happen to pick this hilltop site out? Because of the view?
She picked it out.
And you bought it?
She liked it. The idea is to have her like it. That's all that's necessary for me.
It's fun to live in Beverly, isn't it?
We like Beverly very much.
Zucker's Paramount didn't put down the rich. Instead, the studio whisked audiences into a once inaccessible universe of sophistication and luxury.
Qu'est-ce que vous voulez que ça puisse m'exciter? Moi je trouve tout très très bien. Si les plumes pendaient et que les taureaux donnent du lait. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez que ça puisse m'épater? Moi je trouve tout très très bien.
When it came to class for the masses, nobody outdid Louis B. Mayer's MGM. Everything glittered with quality and style, reflecting the vision of the man at the helm.
Mr. Mayer was very persuasive. It's about the only word I could use. And so he'd stand there and he'd watch what was going on and he'd say, no, just wait a minute, stop that. He says, that's not the way to do it. I'll show you how it should be done. And he'd really go through the thing very well. It was everybody, and they never knew when he was going to walk in on them. They were very, very leery of him, the directors, because they never knew when Louis was going to walk down there and say, no, that's not the way I want it. See, he was a perfectionist. He knew what he wanted, and money was no object. At Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, price meant nothing. It was to be the best.
In creating the great movie musical, Hollywood adapted the Broadway musical, an original American art form almost wholly created by fellow immigrant Jews. The music and lyrics were often based on classic stories, reinterpreted from a Jewish perspective.
Almost all of the writing pairs that have come to epitomize Broadway have been Jewish, whether it's Lerner and Lowe and Rodgers and Hammerstein, Jerome Kern. Almost all of them have been Jewish, with the exception, I think, of Cole Porter, really, here.
Irving Berlin did more than any composer to Americanize Jewish aspirations.
Someday I'm going to murder the bugler. Someday they're going to find him dead.
To understand Berlin is to understand the Hollywood moguls. Another cantor's son, he started life in the midst of pogroms.
My life in bed.
Oh, how I hate to get up in the morning. Oh, how I love to remain in bed.
Berlin a Russian immigrant who would go on to write the quintessential American songs. He's a kind of Cyrano de Bergerac. In the foreground is Fred Astaire, the embodiment of American aristocracy, full of grace and upperclassmanship. In the background, the person writing the music and the lyrics is this little Jewish guy. For over 60 years, he tried to reinvent himself. In the process, he infused life into a whole new American ideal.
In the White House, President Eisenhower signs a bill authorizing a gold medal for composer Irving Berlin. It honors him for writing God Bless America and other patriotic songs. For Irving Berlin, this marks another milestone in his rise from humble beginnings to a place of highest esteem.
In Hollywood, they joked that the moguls went from Poland to polo in just one generation. They held Easter egg hunts and Christmas parties. Some of them sent their children to Catholic schools. Their efforts to reinvent themselves seemed boundless. Often the first thing to go was the Jewish name. The Hollywood Jews were obsessed with erasing anything Jewish in their films, their lives, and the lives of their stars. Theodosia Goodman became Theda Bara. Sofia Kosso became Sylvia Sidney. Isser Danielovich Dembski became Kirk Douglas. Leo Jacobi became Lee J. Cobb. Shirley Shrift became Shelley Winters. Bernard Schwartz became Tony Curtis. David Kaminsky became Danny Kaye. Edward Iskevitz became Eddie Cantor. Melvin Hesselberg became Melvin Douglas. Muni Wiesenfreund, a star of the Yiddish theater, became Paul Muni. Emanuel Goldenberg became Edward G. Robinson. The G was a reminder of who he really was. Nice Jewish girls, such as Lily Palmer, Julie Holliday, and Lauren Bacall, or Betty Persky, helped to define the American woman. Not all the Jewish talent went to Hollywood to assimilate. There were over 50 non-Hollywood Yiddish films produced in New York before the Second World War.
Trouble, trouble, wird Hecher breite. Da lebt das Sachen bei, es helft kein Weinen, kein Geschrei. Trouble hat größer in der Kleine. A jeder dreht sich Hand in Kuhn.
These films were the flip side of the Hollywood movies. They parodied Hollywood's optimism and Fred Astaire's top hat gentility. Many who could have gone to Hollywood stayed in New York to make films that expressed their Jewish identity.
These films were shown to an audience which was almost entirely made up of immigrants and sometimes the children of immigrants. And these films, by and large, had a very, very different point of view than Hollywood movies. I mean, the Yiddish movies were kind of fighting a rearguard action to protect certain forms of Jewish cultural expression against the sort of overwhelming, seductive power of the larger American culture.
Wait a minute, you ain't heard nothing yet. Wait a minute, I tell you, you ain't heard nothing. Goodbye. Don't cry.
Warner Brothers' The Jazz Singer was a revolutionary silent film that broke into sound with each musical number. Here, as in the Yiddish film, a cantor's son, played by Al Jolson, who was in real life a cantor's son, has to choose between American fame and Jewish loyalty. At first, the cantor's son seems to choose Judaism. But in assimilationist Hollywood, the story could not end there. Hollywood had to have a Hollywood ending.
Mammy, Mammy, Mammy.
Here, Their dad and his old Jewish ways are dead, while the hero in American blackface sings triumphantly with his Gentile girlfriend waiting in the wings. It was difficult for the Moguls to entirely abandon their Jewishness while the Nazis were persecuting their European kin. Some of the Hollywood Jews could not ignore these events. In 1939, a group of stars, including John Garfield, Edward G. Robinson, and their spokesman, Melvin Douglas, risked their celebrity status to speak out against Hitler.
That all economic connections between the United States of America and Nazi Germany be totally severed, until such time as Germany is willing to re-enter the family of nations in accordance with the humane principles of international law.
Though Carl Laemmle was no longer studio head at this time, he joined the protesters and signed their declaration. Both Laemmle and Harry Warner were active in sponsoring Jewish refugees from Europe. And in 1939, Warner made this anti-fascist speech to the American Legion.
Drive them out. Make America unsafe for those who seek to tear down what others have built through the generations since 1776. Drive them from their secret meeting places. Destroy their insidious propaganda machines.
Warner Brothers made confessions of a Nazi spy only after their Jewish representative in Germany was beaten to death by Hitler's henchmen. Incredibly, this Hollywood film about the dangers of Nazism makes no reference to either Jews or anti-Semitism.
All that noise you hear isn't static. It's death coming to London. Yes, they're coming here now. You can hear the bombs falling on the streets and the homes. Don't tune me out. Hang on a while. This is a big story, and you're part of it. It's too late to do anything here now except stand in the dark and let them come. It's as if the lights were all out everywhere, except in America. Keep those lights burning. Cover them with steel. Ring them with guns. Build a canopy of battleships and bombing planes around them. Hello, America. Hang on to your
It's a wonderful time for the Hollywood Jews. I mean, here were a group of Jews who had spent their lives seeking legitimacy and seeking to be embraced by America. And World War II finally affords them that opportunity to be embraced officially. They are now real patriots.
The Red Army allows its soldiers to celebrate. 24-year-old Hildegard Christoph.
The Russians came. We weren't allowed to lock our doors. Holding machine guns, they herded us into an empty house. Other young women had also been dragged in. The beasts pounced on us, again and again, the entire night. A whole mob of them. At dawn, they disappeared. We crept back to our family. Many committed suicide.
As many as 2 million German women are raped. A 17-year-old schoolgirl, Edelgard Seidel.
We believed in victory, and now this is the end.
Across Europe, 50 million people are dead. Before killing himself, Hitler wrote this last testament.
It is untrue that I or anyone else in Germany wanted war. It was provoked solely by the Jews.
The motion picture industry today is supplying without charge all its newest and best feature films to the U.S. War Department Overseas Film Division.
The movies were a tremendous propagandistic tool during this time. They set up camps for the soldiers to come back in where movies were shown 24 hours a day because that impressed the soldiers with what they were fighting for.
It was the beginning of an unprecedented alliance between Washington and Hollywood.
And you swear that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the United States of America. I do.
For the first time, Hollywood's message was adopted by the government. A democratic state could not send minorities, immigrants, and the poor to die for an America which excluded them. So, if the enemies were fascist, the American army had to be portrayed as caring and sharing.
I want you to feel free to ask questions, even embarrassing ones. Come to me with suggestions. We're going to be more than officers and men in this. We're going to be comrades.
There was always one Jewish character who was never presented as Jewish, but he was Cohen or Schwartz from Brooklyn. There was always one black character, too.
Wesley Epps, Private, 3rd Engineer Battalion.
The American Army during the Second World War was not integrated except in Hollywood movies. And the Office of War Information was very eager to keep our enemies from making capital out of any sort of problems in America. So they didn't want movies that had any racial tensions of any sort.
Corporal Jake Feingold, 4th Chemical Company, USA.
This committee, under its mandate from the House of Representatives, has the responsibility of exposing and spotlighting subversive elements wherever they may exist. That communists have made such an attempt in Hollywood, and with considerable success, is already evident.
With the advent of the Cold War, HUAC began persecuting Hollywood for the populist and pro-Soviet films.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Next, you are going to ask what my religious beliefs are, and you are going to insist before various members of the industry that since you don't like my religious beliefs, I should not work in that industry.
There became an identification in people's minds with the things that went together: intellectuals, Jews, Russians, communists. If you look back at any of the depictions of what communists were, all of these things kind of get merged together in the public imagination.
The chairman of the committee, at the time that it initiated its investigation of Hollywood, was a vicious anti-Semite from Mississippi by the name of John Rankin. And Rankin said on the floor of Congress, I'm just going to read an excerpt from a speech he gave. He said, "Communism is the most dangerous influence in the world today. I am talking about the communism of Leon Trotsky," of course he mentions a Jew, "that is based upon hatred for Christianity." You know that communism. Remember that communism and Christianity can never live in the same atmosphere. Communism is older than Christianity. This is a revision of history, since Karl Marx, to most people's knowledge, is the one who created communism. But this communism, which is clearly a euphemism for Judaism, is older than Christianity. It is the curse of the ages. It hounded and persecuted the Savior during his earthly ministry, inspired his crucifixion, derided him in his dying agony, and then gambled for his garments at the foot of the cross.
But we are today in a deadly conflict between those two ideologies, and there can be no compromise.
Mr. Rankin,
in this country.
I hope that you're not impugning in any way the American activities of the motion picture employers in Hollywood.
I am some of them, I'll say.
Well, I want to tell you right now that there is no group of more American people in the country than are those in Hollywood. Well, I want to tell you some of the things they're doing.
Well, I know some of the things they're doing, and I know some of the things they're doing that probably you don't know.
I heard a baby screaming. I still remember very clearly the mother was the bleeding all over, and tried to nurse baby, and baby was so. When I remember that part of it, I just can't take it.
The river is choked with floating corpses.
Many of those still alive are barely recognizable.
People themselves just horrible looking. The hair was ashes and kinked up, and some skin hanging on. Just dead people walking like a ghost.
Eyewitnesses will talk about a lot of the survivors walking out with their hands in front of them. Apparently it dulled the pain of skin that was actually falling off, but it also made people look like walking ghosts.
I remember one woman described seeing a man walking down the road holding his eyeball in his hand. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine how Dante-esque the world was that was created by the explosion of this beautiful invention in physics.
Yes, during my formative years, mushroom clouds were all the rage.
Britain's doctors say 33 million people in this country may be killed and injured in a nuclear war.
To my babyish eyes, it seemed every news bulletin consisted of nuclear paranoia, Mrs. Thatcher, blood-curdling statistics about the inevitable apocalypse. Despite the high stakes, however, it was hard for the average viewer to picture a nuclear war. I mean, we'd seen what happened in Hiroshima, but that was black and white and crackly and seemed to mainly affect Japanese people living in the 1940s, so it didn't really count. What the average Brit needed was a no-nonsense visual guide to what could happen, and hallelujah, that's precisely what they got. In 1982, the BBC broadcast a QED special called A Guide to Armageddon, which simulated the consequences of a 1 megaton nuclear bomb going pop a mile over St Paul's Cathedral. Apparently, the heat alone would be inconsiderate enough to slightly damage the cross on top of St Paul's, spoil a few windows, leave a Bible looking dog-eared, slightly devalue the contents of the National Gallery and boil the Serpentine a bit. It would be bad news for anyone who enjoys not burning to death in an incinerated car or bus, and even if you live 4 miles away and were hiding indoors, it was probably going to go down as one of your least favourite afternoons, especially if you've been looking forward to reading Woman's Own. In fact, if you were even vaguely nearby, your body would frazzle like a carbonised lamb chop unless you were standing as far away as Wimbledon, at which point at least one of your eyebrows would survive. At around the same time, the Americans had a pop at nuclear drama themselves, with the vaguely more upbeat The Day After, which starred Steve Guttenberg in a tale of everyday burning, screaming Americans. Just like Threads, it depicted billowing mushroom clouds, which looked a bit like the world's grooviest lava lamp. Anyway, Steve Guttenberg survives by hiding in a shop. Although the radiation does leave him looking a little less cocksure by the end. After US President Ronald Reagan saw this, he wrote in his diary that it was very effective and had left him greatly depressed. And not long afterwards, the superpowers adopted a policy of arms reduction, culminating in the signing of the Intermediate Nuclear Arms Force Treaty in Reykjavik. So in summary, Steve Guttenberg saved the world. Thanks, Steve! Don't make any more films. Thanks to Guttenberg's selfless sacrifice, today's world isn't facing all-out nuclear war between two superpowers, yet it feels more chaotic and perilous than it did back in the 80s. Perhaps because the presentation of current affairs has become more chaotic and perilous. It's almost a hyper-edited, real-time televisual thriller.
Tonight, can the world come together to confront a rogue nation?
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. The reverberations of what happens with the collapse of Saddam's regime could very well create an implosion in a neighboring regime like Iran.
Rather than using calm reason, most corrective television uses fear to hammer its message home. It's one of the most powerful ways to grab an audience's attention. But why? Well, for one thing, no matter how sophisticated we humans appear to be with our fancy shoes and Nintendo Wiis and whatnot, our brains are still cursed with a paleo-mammalian limbic system which the modern iPad-owning part of us can't control. Our fear responses are governed by twin almond-shaped clusters of nuclei known as the amygdalae, sort of primitive reactionary mind nuts beyond the reach of human intellect, a bit like TalkSport presenters. The point of the amygdalae is essentially protection. You're supposed to be stimulated when confronted by a loud noise or a sudden movement because, well, it could be a lion leaping in to attack you. That's why it's almost impossible to ignore anything which seems like a threat, be it a lion or a scary newsreader.
A strong possibility of attack. The spectre of Irish terrorism returns to British soil.
The amygdalae are also thought to be closely associated with memory, so if you have an unpleasant experience and your amygdalae are stimulated, an association quickly forms in your head. That's why the man uses scare tactics to mould your behaviour from an early age. Tuning into the news is like looking directly into the face of terror.
A chilling new look tonight at the face of terror.
Video of a suicide bomber smiling for the camera as he gets ready for his deadly mission in Afghanistan.
This is like a jihadist 24. It's got that tension in it that you can't really turn yourself away.
And you can't really turn yourself away because you're biologically programmed to pay attention to any potential threat. The amygdala may fire off in response to the pre-programmed terrors we're born with, instinctive fear of loud noises and sudden movements and the like, but it's also easy for them to help us learn to fear almost anything. Early news broadcasts were stern announcements from the authorities consisting of little more than still photographs and explanatory diagrams backed with a vocal summary. The BBC newswallers believed moving pictures would distract the viewer and prevent them from absorbing the informational content. Gradually, TV news loosened up and began to realise the advantages it had over newsprint. Unlike their desperate medieval ink and paper counterparts, TV reporters could use the moving image to make otherwise mundane stories more interesting and immersive.
This filthy smoke and chemical smog is again attacking the people for whom there's most danger, the people with chest and heart troubles.
The translation of news into TV grew more sophisticated. The newsroom arrived, there were more interesting graphics, and instead of a letters page, vox pops with the public.
Can I interrupt you, Dick? Are your prices up a lot?
Yes, sir. Our prices are up on according to transport and difficulties in getting it, and us pulling our guts out to fetch it to the public on their table.
And when major events occurred, the printing press was left standing by television, which could interrupt you in your own home to depress the arse off you.
Over to the newsroom.
The death of John F. Kennedy happened in Dallas at 12:25.
And what's more, rather than reading wordy dispatches from overseas war reporters, TV viewers could follow the journalists into the thick of the action. They didn't even wait for the gunfire to stop before filing their reports.
It's heavy artillery support for the Americans, and because of this, they're not immediately likely to lose out here.
TV news grew even more dynamic as colour television arrived, making events seem increasingly vivid and dispiriting and brutal and all horrible-like. Unless, like me, you enjoy a nice violent riot with a lovely shepherd's pie and a glass of chocolate milk.
Riot police were extremely fierce, often
It happened ages ago, it's funny. Faced with a medium that made current affairs more exciting, newspapers were forced to zhuzh up their own content, downplaying their comparatively dry news material and adding frothier piffle, which was proudly and exhaustively trumpeted in the gaudy adverts of the time.
Uncanny. Unbelievable. This man claims a Welsh housewife under hypnosis returned to 6 previous lives. Can this be so? The amazing evidence in tomorrow's Sunday Mirror. Tommy Steele reveals the agony of staying at the top. And girls, how to get your man. A dozen ways to look more sexy, plus win this dream outfit in the marvellous Sunday Mirror tomorrow.
Ever since satellite news first appeared, the landscape had become more competitive and the fight for impact intensified. As a consequence, across the board, the graphics steadily became more fearsome and bombastic, the sets more cavernous and self-important, and the delivery more theatrical.
The Liberal Democrats have accused the other two parties of gazing into the gutter.
And part of this more crowd-pleasing approach was that the opinion of the viewer grew steadily more important. Current affairs was no longer a stern proclamation from the establishment and was becoming more like a public sounding board. News in general had started to move away from explaining the world to us and move towards us explaining our view of the world to them.
If you've got a story to tell, we'd love to hear from you. The email address, as always, yournews.
All the while, the internet was starting to overtake TV as a source of instant news. And just as newspapers reacted to TV by becoming spicier, so TV news morphed into rolling news, in which everything became a sensational non-stop crisis full of incremental, horrible developments.
We can now tell you that he's actually unconscious and his kidneys have stopped working.
It's become a hope-sapping broadcast from the depression dimension as someone simply reads aloud a list of the worst events in the world.
He killed his 74-year-old grandmother, also his mother, his uncle, his cousin, his 15-year-old second cousin. In addition, he killed a baby who was 18 months old. He killed a sheriff deputy's wife. He killed 2 pedestrians. He killed a petrol station assistant. He killed a motorist. He shot the chief of police, and he shot himself. We'll let you digest that for a moment, and we're going to be back with all today's top stories and indeed the business news.
Thanks for that. Today's news often seems to be about nothing but the thrill of the chase, an endless parade of fresh horror piled upon fresh horror. No time for reflection, just pictures. Look at this, then look at this. Come on, tune in, rubberneckers, have a bloody good gawp.
Well, it looks like Disney's frozen out God.
When one little girl tried to post what she was thankful for on the DisneyChannel.com, she was blocked because of her reference to the Almighty. Apparently, Disney considers God's name a profanity.
The devil is about to visit Florida this Christmas, as a satanic temple there has scored a major victory, winning a battle to bring a display of Lucifer to the inside of the state capitol. Officials have approved the move under the Freedom of Speech and Religion law. Lucian Greaves, a spokesperson for the Satanic Temple, says his organization just wants to send out a positive message and set all differences aside for the annual holiday.
Satanism is the worship of the devil, and there's nothing positive that can come from that.
Well, it's not the only victory by devil worshippers in Florida lately. In October, one group sought to distribute satanic coloring books to school kids. That's under a state law allowing organizations to pass out religious materials in educational facilities.
Soon it all becomes meaningless, which has the side effect of making reality itself feel somehow unreal, like a work of fiction writing itself, a destiny beyond our control, and all we can do is stare at it in stunned desperation. Television can certainly condition you to be frightened of all sorts of things. For example, dark city streets. Most of the dark city streets you see are on television. And what's happening in them? Well, usually something awful, like a mugging or a murder. In the 1970s, Professors George Gerbner and Larry Gross of the University of Pennsylvania carried out pioneering research into the effect of television on viewers. They believed that within a few decades, television had come to enjoy a degree of influence on modern society that was comparable to the power religion held over mankind for centuries. Gerbner and Gross developed a hypothesis known as cultivation theory. Cultivation theory says that over time, watching television alters a viewer's perception of reality, that their view of the real world starts to march in step with that of the televised one. And the more frequently an image or event is depicted on screen, the greater significance the cultivated viewer attaches to it in the real world. Since much of TV consists of dramatic conflict, violent action and alarming news coverage, the more you watch, the more passive, nervous and frightened you become. Gerbner called this mean world syndrome, quite literally the belief that your world has become a mean and frightening place. Gerbner's research appeared to show that heavy viewers often overestimated the amount of risk they faced in everyday life. They were more likely to believe crime rates were rising even when they were falling, and often thought they were more likely to become victims of crime themselves. The most frightening crime of all is, of course, murder. Oh, God! And there's no danger of a TV murder shortage anytime soon. Not that regular murderers are dangerous enough for the televised world, where they're routinely depicted as criminal geniuses playing a diabolical game of cat and mouse with a troubled police detective wearing the worried expression of a bloodhound opening a court summons. TV loves presenting you with fearful tales of murder, but it's often a curiously reassuring type of fear which reinforces the notion that real life follows a dramatic narrative in which the dastardly villains are brought to justice. When undeniably random bad things do make it on screen, TV processes them on your behalf, turning them into titillation in shows like the enthusiastic 999, which enabled viewers to enjoy mindless emergencies in the comfort of their own homes. 999 justified its existence by alerting the public to important issues like lifebelt theft.
4,000 life belts like this one are stolen or go missing every year.
Yeah, people just toss them in the sea. It's an outrage. It also afforded Michael Burke an opportunity to ask the important questions.
Have you ever thought what it'd be like to be stuck in the path of a giant digger?
No, why don't you paint a picture for me? 999's jaunty, low-budget reconstructions look altogether genteel compared to the effects-laden reconstruction extravaganzas of today. Shows like Air Crash Investigation, which ostensibly exist to give you a greater insight into airline safety, but are actually all about giving your fear cells a cheeky tickle. Air Crash Investigation combines impressive special effects with an almost pornographic focus on the human terror of the passengers and crew. There's also dialogue torn from the black box recorder and shoved in the mouths of actors.
Push it up! Push it way up! Way up! Way up! Way up!
And of course the inevitable money shot. Even though you're 20 times more likely to die during the drive to the airport than you are on the plane, chances are this is the kind of dramatic image your brain has helpfully associated with air travel. Apparently concerned it might be running out of nasty real-life threats to warn you about, TV has started visually speculating about bad stuff that hasn't happened but might.
One day, the world will end.
In recent years, there's been a slew of scary, hand-wringing, what-if drama documentaries depicting what could occur if things got even more dangerous for humankind than they already are. We've seen spectacular simulations of what might happen if Yellowstone Park suddenly blew up, hard-hitting investigations into what might happen if the sun suddenly ballooned in size.
This is a world we can barely imagine.
And spine-tingling visualisations of how things might look if a large hadron collider went a bit Amstrad. In fact, it sometimes seems there's no end to TV's perpetual quest to helpfully alert the viewer to new potential threats. Alarming though much of television is, as we stare into our screens, desperately gazing into the light like a rodent suckling at a consolatory teat, the warning box is comforting us even as it scares. It says if you obey the man, you can avoid danger. It transforms random calamity into Hollywood-style entertainment, rendering it less real. It says the good guys will defeat the evil guys, and it says Steve Guttenberg can save the world. It makes sense of our universe in a way that's as soothing as it is fake. Morning! And what's more, it gets away with it, and that is frightening. With every passing second, each of these unsuspecting humanoids crawls 1/60th of a minute closer to Coffin O'Clock. As we make the journey from the cradle to the grave, we'll make and lose countless friends along the way. But one companion who'll be by our side throughout is Mr. Terry Television, who's been there for us, holding our brain's hand through each increasingly shaky footfall. But television doesn't seem to like us whatever age we are, whether it's painting young people as tearaway yobs.
How does it make you feel when you see your face on the front page of the Birmingham Mail like that, cast as a yob?
I am a yob.
Or old people as hilarious irrelevancies. Little wonder we've come to view ageing as a sign of incompetence. To what extent do you think old people have failed?
Probably to quite a large extent.
Yeah. This is the top-secret research facility where TV executives, marketing experts and psychopaths attempt to discover what makes the different age groups tick. Television takes the business of targeting different age groups very seriously, and it's a process that begins early on from the moment when you first emerge blinking and shrieking from the womb. While there are some bespoke programmes for babies, presumably few sane adults consider them worthwhile viewing. There are shows like the Twee Baby Einstein series, a set of quasi-instructive montages of colours and puppets and shapes which eager young parents buy and play to their offspring in the hope this will somehow boost the child's intellect, although I'd say in educational terms it's probably about as effective as rubbing a dictionary on your baby's head. But if babies don't use TV, TV is only too happy to use babies as Wickle salespeople. Yes, babies are often cynically employed to help shift products they can't even use. Now, if I transplanted a baby's head onto a loaf of bread in a bid to improve sales, people would call me a monster. But apparently it's just fine when an international organisation digitally transplants babies' heads onto CGI bodies in order to flog bottles of water. To be fair, that is quite cute, albeit despicable. As babies get older and even more bothersome, they mutate into children who are well catered for by television with thousands of entertainment vehicles at their disposal. They're also used in adverts as visual shorthand for innocence and heritage. It's at this point TV starts sorting the flesh blobs into easily manageable categories, boys and girls. So boys are assailed by short sales pitches promoting mindless, devious violence.
I Butler free!
Here's how the quick shooter hat works. Just press this secret button right here, and a replica of an authentic Western pistol pops out and fires.
And extended sales pitches full of fantasy monsters and fighting and lasers and explosions, while girls are bombarded with eerie adverts for nightmarish dolls.
Look who's come to your house to stay. A pal you can play with all day long. She's Patty Playpal, a big doll, big as a 3-year-old, and Patty's real as life.
And adverts which should help fuel that future image neurosis.
Beautiful Chrissy has beautiful hair that grows.
He has beautiful hair. She has beautiful eyes. She has beautiful clothes.
And the moment they mature to tweenhood, hideous propaganda films about Miley Cyrus. The pioneering queen of tween role models is Hannah Montana, a wisecracking, warbling smartass played by Miley Cyrus, who's perhaps the only convincing argument I've ever seen for China's unofficial policy of discarding female infants at birth. Hannah Montana features a colour palette so garish watching it feels like being stabbed in the eye with a sharpened lollipop, and a cast who seem to communicate exclusively via irritating sounds.
Say what, and that's all.
fresh.
Despite looking young enough to have gnawed through her own umbilical cord shortly before each scene, Hannah herself leads a surprisingly adult life, especially with boys, with whom she has a chaste but surprisingly confusing relationship.
I'm gonna tell you something that I've never told anyone before.
Please don't have a hairy back. Please don't have a hairy back.
Usually if a 13-year-old's worried her lover might have a hairy back, it's because she's been trafficked. After tweens come teenagers. Teenagers are, by their very nature, a sulky, arrogant group consisting of nothing but grease, pus, hormones, hair gel and obstinance, whose chief role in society is to scoff at absolutely everyone else. There used to be so few programmes aimed at teens that merely spotting one on screen was a novelty. When they did appear, they were routinely portrayed as confused, alienated loners with silly dress sense. By the late 1970s, teenagers were so hopelessly out of control, desperate measures were called for in the shape of the BBC's Community Programmes Unit. The Community Programmes Unit had had a brainwave. Why not give teenagers aged between 16 and 20 a 45-minute show of their very own and let them decide the content? Something Else was a painfully right-on affair from the very beginning, awkwardly mixing live punk performances with stilted political debate.
In the studio, we've got The Clash and Joan Lester, MP for Eton and Slough. Do you think it's going to be a total disinterest in politics in the future?
I don't know, maybe I'll grow up to be Prime Minister.
Who knows?
By the time the teenager concept was tried again in 2006, this time in a groundbreaking Channel 4 show called Whatever, presentational styles and the notion of what constitutes an issue had both become a little more bad.
Couldn't live without pussy and my mum. Don't put them two things together, because I'll slap you.
I'm most proud that I've got big boobs, and when I take my bra off, they don't move.
My best feature is I talk shit. I can talk shit to the world.
Coming up on tonight's Whatever, everything you ever wanted to know about LA gangbangers, pervy sex toys, and comedy drug abuse.
Yes, television constantly assumes all 16 to 24-year-olds are mindless jigging gits. As a consequence, glib, meaningless images of youth continually piss from every screen, as though the channels are engaged in some sort of unofficial contest to see who can produce the most vapid, lowest common denominator screen turds imaginable. It's like they've got no idea. Any old shit will do, whether it's banal footage of Peter Andre roving the earth like a backward half-emu carrot man, or a turgid exploration of the latest celebrity Aunt Sally's, or a gaudy reality show about overconfident, smiling young bucks. Back in ye day, most TV shows were designed for an audience of adults, different ages and haircuts, admittedly, but adults nonetheless. The family unit that the big entertainment shows were aimed at revolved around the wants and needs of the parents, not the kids.
You have 1 minute, 15 seconds to fill a camel, starting now. That's it, force it in.
But by the late 80s, those kids had grown up to be young TV producers themselves, and the result was whizzy info-packed shows like Network 7, which prided themselves on being cutting-edge and full of young faces. This, in turn, begat the Love It or Hate It weekly cringe fest, which was the word which set the template of almost every youth show to follow. Outrage, idiocy, smut, idiocy, humiliation and idiocy. As cable and satellite TV flowered during the 90s, fusty old variety club faces began to be replaced by a new wave of less trad presenters who dressed and behaved like irreverent younger folk and who appeared to take absolutely nothing seriously. Before long, everyone was being flip and cool, while the old dinosaurs were being mocked in cruelly observed comedies. Aha! But it wasn't just presenters who were getting younger. Not so long ago, when our minds were less dominated by image, politicians were allowed, nay, expected, to resemble the human equivalent of a dusty old ledger. But as politicians' screen presence became increasingly important, they started feeling the pressure to look young too, until by 1997 even the establishment itself seemed to have been replaced by a younger, brighter, grinnier, more relaxed model. Zip forward to today and all our major political figures look like bland air freshener salesmen or nice neighbours from a shit soap opera.
Introducing a new reversalist.
I mean, look at that, a new reversalist. It's a bit like calling it Time Denialist or Canuto Cream. These are disturbing mini-movies presenting a shimmering vision of a potentially youthier you rendered possible by dubious-sounding miracle science.
When they analyzed my face at the Pons Institute, it showed that my fine lines and age spots disappeared. It's okay to be 40, just as long as you look 30.
And apparently it's okay to look 30 if you sound about 9. There's no age you're allowed to let yourself go anymore. No, the cosmetics industry will remorselessly chase you past the menopause and towards the coffin.
I'm 68, and Age Re-Perfect Pro Calcium is the future of my skin and yours.
God, 68 and still smearing cosmetic paint on your canvas. What next? Skeleton polishing cream? We're living in a world in which everyone expects the best of everything, with the unhinged sense of entitlement that used to be the sole reserve of insane Roman emperors or members of the Bullingdon Club. The more we want, the less satisfied we feel. Happiness seems perpetually out of reach. Why? Maybe somewhere along the way we started actually believing what this little electronic bullshitter was feeding us. Oh, isn't life brilliant? I mean, just check out this place. The barman's a bloody great hunk. These two are flipping gorgeous. He has got a haircut so cool, it's like he downloaded it from Mars. And you, my friend, are part of all of this too, because you are living the dream. Except you're not, are you? Because the dream's just that, it's a dream. Real life doesn't work like that. Real life's an often fruitless quest for intermittent patches of happiness, interspersed with toil, ennui, divorce, bad haircuts, overpriced box sets, stomach bugs, repetition, stomach bugs, gas bills, sexual dysfunction, Justin Bieber and wasps. This is real life. Waste ground, tramps, bloke eating a rat on a stick. Cameron's Britain. How's your rat? Too chewy? Yeah. See, even his lunch is disappointing, because this is real life. Ugh, that's why it's such a crushing mystery that half the time your TV's eager to stick happy-go-lucky wits like that in your eye. Why? 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 This is the world of aspirational television, aspirational being a wildly popular term in TV land. It's a world in which the majority of people are thin, attractive, witty, sassy, cool, fun-loving, thoughtful and happy and enjoy a life of cocktails, dick and shoes. The basic theory behind aspirational programming is that if you watch beautiful, fun-loving people on TV, you'll somehow feel like they're your friends, whereas in reality, of course, you're essentially just a tramp staring at them from the other side of the room. It seems every other show on TV these days has some sort of aspirational bent, but where did it all begin? Like everything evil in the universe, it came from the world of advertising. Many early adverts were functional things, little more than animated flickering billboards extolling the practical virtues of the products they were pushing.
Before his toast and tea, give him a good big plate of cornflakes. No cooking, no messy washing up, eaten and digested like lightning.
But as consumers began to realise that most products were basically the same, because it's all just stuff, isn't it? Advertisers began attaching fantasies to the products they were hawking. And often this fantasy was an opulent vision that could be all yours for the price of something that tasted like a refrigerated human organ inside chocolate. As the 60s swung into view, cool was the primary dream. The lucky cool adversods lived in a world of glamour, travel, foxy burqa babes and nice hair. Of course, instead of hair goo, they were actually flogging you a membership card. Buy this MacGuffin and you too can be one of the fortunate happy ones, complete with an enviably cool lifestyle. Then the 70s arrived and everything outdoors was shit awful. But luckily, the 2 or 3 members of the population who weren't outside rioting or being bombed or gobbed on were indoors being distracted by eerie images of upmarket aspirational living.
Lovely taste of Nescafe Gold Blade.
For that very special taste.
As the 80s approached, the advertiser's desirable vision of the high life stuck. Conspicuous consumption was being celebrated for its own sake. Perhaps you could get your hand on luxury every day. But somewhere along the way, the glitzy, aspirational values of commercials leaked out and started infecting popular dramas. I first became aware of it in the 80s as shows like Dallas brought the billionaire lifestyle to the plebeian masses. Dallas was a sumptuous, conspicuously decadent soap detailing the existence of a family of impossibly wealthy American oil shits living empty lives. But even though it was clear money wasn't bringing the Ewings happiness, it was impossible not to envy them. Game shows are a surefire indicator of how our relationship with money has changed. Not so long ago, everyone on game shows was chummy and nice, like this bunch.
Let's meet the blue team.
Hi, I'm Debbie Kate.
Hello, Debbie.
Max Robertson.
Welcome, Max.
Felix Proud.
Hello, Felix. Welcome.
And I'm Penny Lowe.
Hello, Penny. Nice to see you.
See ya! But now, cold steel menace and raw money is the order of the day, and the game is a dog-eat-dog accumulation festival culminating in a bitter dispute.
You're pathetic.
Don't get personal.
No, you are. You're pathetic. You're a selfish cunt.
Oh, it's like watching people knife each other to death in a skit. but less sexually arousing.
Another harbinger of change is the shifting portrayal of wealthy people on the screen.
Back in 1985, while their lifestyles looked glamorous, fictional billionaires like JR were clearly the bad guys. 20 years later, actual living, breathing tycoons were being celebrated, and the more explicitly ruthless they were, the brighter their stars shone.
You're sacked. You're sacked. You're sacked. Now get out.
Money is terrible. It's just a depressing way of boiling our wonderful world down to a set of grey, eyeless, dickless little numbers and then using them to screw each other over. Oh, one for me and one for you. Ooh, you've got one more than me. I'm going to stab you in the ribs. That's what money is.
I mean, look at the sort of twerper miscreant who understands money. Just listen to this bellming twink.
Very impressive. And their outlook for 2012 has just been raised from 64.
Once you've accumulated plenty of money, TV encourages you to invest it all in a box made of bricks.
Rich people used to stop us noticing how privileged they were by tinting their car windows or hiding behind high walls where you couldn't kill them. But now TV allows you a peek behind the gates, and frankly it's harrowing. Cribs is a highly successful variant of Through the Keyhole, in which a very rich person shows you the rewards which society has granted them for being important and successful and loved.
What up, MTV? It's your boy Mims, and welcome to my crib. Come inside.
Oh yeah, right, it's your boy Mims. We're going round your boy Mims's house, everyone. I don't know why he's famous. Maybe he invented super noodles. It's effectively a shopping channel of stuff that could have been yours if you'd been born in America and learned to rap rather than sitting on your arse in Taunton watching Cribs. Cribs dangles the aspiration carrot so impractically out of reach they might as well put it on a 1,000,000-mile-long stick tied to a rocket that's been fired into a black hole.
People have always wanted nice houses, obviously. They're not mad, but back in the day, your options were limited.
If you were poor, you had to live in a cramped tin full of relatives and cholera. If you were middle class, you had a bigger home. And if you were a member of the aristocracy, you lived in Downton Flippin' Abbey. People largely accepted whichever kind of hovel they'd been allotted, and then in the 80s, Thatcher legalised council houses or whatever, and suddenly everyone wanted one. And glamorous TV ads made the dream look attainably easy.
Washing machine, fridge, oven and hob. And we can afford it with Wimpy's financial help, can't we?
But having purchased the roofs over their heads, people didn't really know what to do with themselves.
I mean, what are you actually meant to do in a house? Raise a family? Start a bottle-top collection? Sit there and die? No wonder people went mad and started desperately trying to spruce their flipping death boxes up in a bid to kill time.
TV soon noticed this and began knocking up cheapo home improvement guff castles like changing rooms, which took the concept of interior design and married it to the concept of people slinging any old crap together and generated several hundred hours of television in the process.
See, I thought we'd put it on there like that.
What, that's it?
Yeah, just screw it in there like that.
All right, yeah, wall moustache. Yeah, you've doubled the value of that house, you genius. The ultimate in homemade pornography has to be pornography made from homes. Televised aspirational showrooms such as Channel 4's Grand Designs, which offers a tantalising glimpse of the kind of dream house you too could be dwelling in if only you had several £100,000 and or 6 months of leisure time to spare. The presenter, Kevin MacLeod, whose name even makes him sound like a man who's stepped out of a dream, fronts the show in the manner of an enthusiastic curator leading you on a personal tour around a museum of cosy middle-class satisfaction. Largely, though, it's an envy generator as we shit-sofaed schlubs look on, moving from mild interest to outright fury. Oh, that's a nice fireplace. What a wonderfully huge kitchen. Oh, I love the way the windows let the light into their lovely house. Oh, they've got a pool. Oh, you've got a pool. Thanks to shows like this, it somehow feels like it's not enough to just own a reasonably okay house anymore. Instead, you can feel a lingering sense of failure for dwelling inside anything other than an architecturally fascinating 4,000-foot translucent diagram with a gigantic mauve egg in the middle for you and your revolting kids to shit into.
Ugh, depressing. Still, at least you can comfort eat. Food is another aspirational touchstone. It's not good enough to simply heat up a pie anymore. No, today you're supposed to be some kind of gastronomic show pony with a signature dish of your own. This rat's coming along nicely.
Once upon a time, cookery programmes used to concentrate on the business of cookery.
Well, today we're going to take a look at some recipes using offal, or spare parts as I like to call it, because I never did like the word offal. Anyway, whatever you call it, offal or spare parts, liver and kidneys are certainly very good for us, and most nutritionists suggest that we should eat them well at least once a week to be really healthy and get all the correct vitamins that we need.
Whereas today's cookery shows are less about food and more about lifestyle. Take the delicious Miss Darl, in which a blonde supermodel floats around a lovely kitchen bibbling on about foodie-wood.
A good bit of lemon zest. I think to have a dish named after you, you have to be a bit of a diva. I do, however, I think, have a bra named after me. Much rather have a dish, but I have a bra.
Hey, parent, do you remember when you biologically converted a spoonful of recently expelled gunk into one of these screaming attention seekers? Well, little did you realise that what you were doing was creating a living, breathing status symbol, although that is precisely what you were doing.
And advertisers know how much parents adore their kids, so they shit out aspirational ads that prey on their paternal instincts and heighten the sense that these magical imps need protection. One problem with treating kids like delicate Fabergé eggs is you become so dementedly paranoid about any misfortune befalling them that you end up sealing them indoors around the clock, effectively locking them in a prison that serves organic food in which every surface has been sprayed 86 times with antibacterial disinfectant before those fingers can touch it. So they sit there indoors, growing up in the flickering glare of aspirational imagery, soaking it all up, brightly coloured kids shows which make stardom seem both attainable and desirable, swanky seductive adverts where a celebrity tells you you're special.
Because we're worth it.
And glossily packaged celebrity piddle like the Saturdays 24/7, which largely consists of banal footage of singing Five Knuckle Shuffle the Saturdays, punting about like children, dressing up, drawing, playing with their soft toys, dressing up, tickling each other, making and doing, dressing up, playing Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush, dressing up as their mums, dressing up, climbing the trees, face painting and dressing up. One natural consequence of long-term exposure to this kind of piffle is the kids who watch it grow up wanting to be treated like celebrities themselves, becoming self-obsessed little emperors in the process. For evidence, tune into MTV's My Super Sweet 16. Not so much a show, more an orchestrated smear campaign against humankind in general. Some of it is punishingly depressing. For instance, here a brat's mum buys her a $67,000 Lexus for her birthday.
Happy birthday! What the hell? I don't want my car now! Happy birthday. No! What the hell? I don't want my car now! Oh, Mom!
But she's unhappy because she didn't want it until the night of her birthday party.
I can't believe she's such an idiot! She just ruined the whole party! Everything! She just ruined everything! You ruined my life! I hate you! We're leaving! The party's off!
You know, I think this might actually be an Al-Qaeda recruitment film. Far from being just an American thing, this kind of ostentatious kiddie spoiling has now leapt across the Atlantic and onto our shores and has its own British spin-off, My Super Sweet 16 UK. Here, in a characteristically unedifying episode, we meet a young lad called Freddie, who's more spoiled than the average ancient Babylonian prince. He lives in a massive house, has a racehorse named after him, is driven everywhere in a huge limousine, and thinks nothing of blowing a fortune on gaudy bling bullshit. Freddie's birthday is fast approaching, but rather than setting up a Facebook page or sending out invites like a normal Earth-dwelling citizen, he holds an X Factor style audition to decide who can attend.
You all ready to be judged?
Come the night itself, he arrives in a choreographed simulation of a red carpet celebrity event. It's a strange thing, really, to think that within my lifetime, teenage aspirations have morphed from being able to pull off a pretty good BMX trick or having fewer spots to being showered with adulation like your Lady Gaga and Peter Andre crossed with God.
Make no mistake, the next generation is going to be horrible. If I was Education Secretary, which I'm not currently, I'd force every school in the country to run cartoons telling kids they were worthless, just to counterbalance it all. Way back yonder, you know, in the past, folk only achieved a level of what might be termed celebrity by displaying a remarkable level of talent, whereas during the current confused period of human history, it's apparently possible to become famous merely for inhaling and exhaling on camera. The galaxy of fame has a complex, ever-shifting hierarchy. Burning brightest are the proper stars, actors and musicians and the like. Some become supergiants like Beyoncé or Brad Pitt, and they're also insanely powerful. If George Clooney called a live, globally televised press conference during which he plucked out 2 of his chest hairs and said he'd post them to the first viewer to turn round and murder a member of their own family,
thousands would perish. There's a fun little fact for you. This bona fide constellation also includes some dwarf stars. For example, Adam Woodyat, who plays Ian Beale, is one of the most recognisable faces in Britain, but because he plays a fish and chip shop owner, people consider him intrinsically low rent and almost certainly treat him accordingly in the street.
Hey, Bill!
Billy Bob!
Hey, Bill!
Billy is a piss drop. He runs a chip shop in Albert Square. The filthy queer. Wash your peace, Billy! Wash your peace!
See, that's the funny thing about appearing on television. People treat you like the thing you portray. Then there's the newest cluster, not really stars at all, more huge balls of antimatter, like Jordan or Lindsay Lohan, who act as sort of sanctioned hate sponges, feeding off the animosity of the general public, growing bigger and bigger until they implode. The sheer amount of vitriol many people harbour for these anti-celebs is staggering. They hate them and hate them and hate them with the same dogged indignance of racists. Good. Showbiz git-gorp rags exploit the fact that we both hate and love celebrities, which is why their every imperfection gets looked over and circled by their vile staff.
That's definitely a weird bruise.
OK, let's go with weird bruise.
If even the world's most inherently gorgeous people are subject to that kind of scrutiny, how can Joanne Average possibly compete? Well, she can't, obviously, so her entire life becomes one long, slow, emotional breakdown, and frankly, she looks like a pig when she cries. Still, little wonder the normal, ordinary person feels worthless, because the aspirational whirlpool is, if anything, speeding up. Every image on television is growing more glamorous and dreamlike by the moment. The adverts are becoming more unhinged in their desperate quest for things to aspire to. Even everyday products have lost their minds, and they don't even have minds.
Wear jewels and flowers every day.
Every day? I'm not Elton John.
Infuse your clothes with the elegant fragrance of white diamond and lotus flower.
Diamonds, I've always thought they reek. Must be a classy product, this. Something really exclusive.
Part of the new Infusions collection. From bold 2-in-1. A little more luxury in your laundry.
Me, we're doomed. And as for food, well, even dog food, which used to be flogged with a sort of gruff, matronly friendliness,
looks good, it cuts well, and it's meaty. It's nourishment, solid nourishment.
has become a gourmet signature dish for you to plop down in front of some four-legged Caesar.
Carefully sourced ingredients, balanced with selected vegetable toppings.
Won't look so nice when he shits it out down the park. Actually, it probably will. Even cribs got more extreme with the incredible teen cribs. How are you meant to aspire to be someone's child?
All right, enough of that. Let's go check out my spa.
And the worship of money, just raw money, got worse so bad there were rap videos which looked more like satirical visions of empty excess.
It's actually not clear who this is demeaning the most, the women, black people in general, or me, the viewer. I haven't seen that much money being mindlessly thrown at a shuddering arse since CNN hired Piers Morgan. Before long, behaving like a massive swaggering twat wasn't just acceptable, it was openly encouraged. Who does P. Diddy think he is, King?
I am King. The new fragrance for men from Sean John.
You am King Unbelievable.
Faced with all these unattainable dreams, little wonder so many people in so many places got themselves wedged so deep in debt.
People bought houses and bragged about how the value kept zooming up through the skyline. In fact, they didn't seem to be houses at all, but enchanted coin-shitting machines. It was all a collective delusion, and none of it was real.
And it wasn't just homeowners, no, the whole world had dreamed itself into a wistful financial thought bubble, which popped.
Today, stock markets across the world tumbled, imploded, continued to collapse like deflated dirigibles.
Well, I say nuts and boo to all these prettified, insidious televisual delusions. Best to hammer shut your dream flap so you don't want for anything anyway, and you're perfectly content to squat around in your own steaming muck. And hey, if it all gets too much, just do what I do and glug your way to Fantasy Island on the good ship Liquid Brain Killer. Yeah, or you could always switch your TV off, stop. The problem is the crushing loneliness of it all. If only we had someone else to experience things with, the whole thing might be somehow bearable. We are all of us alone. We enter this world alone and we leave it alone.
But with the invention of television, loneliness seemed to have been cured forever. Even if you stayed indoors 365 days of the year, your home would be filled with friendly human voices.
You don't matter. You're not important. You're not a person. You're not even lovable. You're not even capable of love.
According to television, the best way to end loneliness for good is to trick another human being into sharing your lifespan with you, to meet someone and fall in love. But what is love anyway?
When you're trying to work out whether you're in love or not, it's only natural to compare how you feel with what you've been taught about how being in love feels. And who taught you how being in love feels? Well, without ever really trying, the television bombarded you with misguided notions about romance from the moment you were first naive enough to swivel your eyes in its fibbing direction.
According to research, when it comes to getting information about love, 94% of young people turn to their television, while only 33% ask mum and 17% dad. But the plug-in parent is a liar, and the fictional world it portrays seeps into your skull, setting a misleading framework. There are two ways to ensure your relationship will be scuppered before it's even begun. One is to carve the phrase, "I despise you," onto your forehead, and the other is to enter into it with wildly unrealistic expectations. Now, studies show a link between the amount of television people watch and the likelihood that they'll believe certain unhelpful relationship myths. Chief among these myths is the notion that there's a singular soulmate out there in the world for you. The thought that out of the many millions of people in the world, there's only one that truly belongs with you. One person. That's your helping. One. Of course, for this to be true, there'd have to be a celestial department of destiny whose job it is to pair people off like producers on a reality show. The first step towards falling in love is to find someone attractive, which you'd think would be a fairly organic process that occurs without much conscious effort on your part. But the chances are television has warped your notions of physical beauty by parading inordinately attractive people in front of you morning, noon and night, thus raising your expectations to unsustainable heights while simultaneously making you feel inferior. In adverts particularly, attractive people are often presented as tantalising prizes. They float through the world almost like angels, drawing admiring glances wherever they go.
She's wearing Tramp and everybody loves her. Tramp by Lanthric. Shouldn't you wear it too?
Always keen to exploit human frailty, advertisers aren't shy about implying all you need to satisfy your biological urge to procreate or put an end to the painful loneliness of your existence is to invest in a product that will drive members of the opposite sex insensible with lust. Lynx commercials in particular employ less subtle imagery than Soviet propaganda, implying Lynx is essentially catnip for girls. Splash it round your carcass and women will flock towards you like plankton, wrestle you for a place in the bedroom and stop dead in their tracks to show you their pussies.
Bound chicka wow wow.
Toothpaste is also excitingly depicted as a startlingly effective way to win the affections of a bit of desirable skycock.
It made her smile dynamite white, dynamite fresh. It got her noticed. That night, Cindy and Jim took off together. Her feet haven't touched the ground since.
Even chewing gum, traditional scourge of bus passengers, can bring couples together on a lonely, dusty road trip. I suppose chewing gum is a pretty good metaphor for most romance. After the initial burst of excitement, you soon find yourself just going through the motions, really, while your interest drains away, and then you end up spitting it out into a hanky. Men seeking advice on how to win over a woman will find no shortage of role models on TV. Trouble is, they're all dicks. For instance, in the epic multicoloured space opera Star Trek, Captain James T. Kirk repeatedly misinterpreted his mission statement, to boldly go where no man has gone before, as a green light to attempt to carve as many notches onto the captain's log as possible.
Kiss me.
It seemed the moment Kirk heard a female voice, he reached for his libido.
Captain Kirk!
But unsubtle though Kirk's bold seduction technique was, there was no denying he often left women weak at the knees. What a role model! Meanwhile, in Movieland, another James, namely James Bond, repeatedly got away with the kind of on-the-job conduct that would earn anyone else an instant tribunal.
No!
And his chat-up lines weren't just creaky, but delivered with all the simmering passion of a gruff sandwich toaster.
There's really nothing very much for us to do tonight. Or is there?
Nonetheless, he too was depicted as successful. Having sex with Roger Moore must be like having an old tree fall on you. As far as TV's concerned, however, when it comes to dating, you shouldn't act like 007, more like 00 tit.
I absolutely adore brunettes, but not blondes. But then again, a lot of blondes aren't really either, if you know what I mean.
Thanks for that. What's your favourite Keats poem? Yes, most dating shows are more profoundly depressing than live footage of screaming ducklings being kicked uncomprehending face first into a mincing machine. Research suggests that the first blossoming of love is accompanied by an increase in levels of a protein known as nerve growth factor, or NGF, which is thought to provoke butterflies in the stomach, sweaty palms, euphoria, you know, all that love shit. But NGF levels subside once a couple has been together for about a year, after which point, if you're lucky, that exhilarating rush of lust is transformed into a bond of loving companionship. TV and the movies don't really provide many accurate examples of coupledom. Most fictional romances finish at the point of consummation, as though the hero's penis is a drawing pin that bursts the fictional universe bubble the moment he sticks it in. When long-term couples are portrayed, they tend to either be seen as sexless, winsome twosomes like Terry and June, or warring partners who apparently despise one another and whose mutual hatred is played for laughs, such as Jack and Vera Duckworth from the sitcom-style soap Coronation Street.
How the hell you could lose a brand new suit, I do not know.
Don't go on, Vera.
Or they're warring partners whose mutual hatred is played for unlaughs, like Den and Angie from the Sober-Minute Woefest EastEnders.
Will you stop it? Will you stop avoiding the issue?
Of course, real-life relationships aren't nearly this cosy. Tolerance, that's true love. In fact, I'd define true love as the ability to share one fridge with the same person for 17 years without resorting to fists. It also helps if you toss in the occasional basic crumb of affection.
Would you say you're disillusioned about
Yes,
marriage?
yes.
Don't think marriage is all it's cracked
No.
up to be?
No.
No?
No.
Does your husband show his gratitude to you in any way for all
No,
you've
no,
done? He doesn't?
No.
No way at all?
No, not really, no.
Does he ever buy you anything?
No.
Never bought you any flowers?
No.
Would you like that if he did?
Oh, yes.
Yes, unless you cultivate a meaningful, quiet, unshowy love for each other, once the NGF leaves town, the dull tedium of life will wear your union down.
It's like being cellmates, except neither of you has to defecate in a bucket now and then while the other one lies on a bunk, silently facing the wall. Every day the same person murping on and on about the same 3 or 4 subjects through their mouth, which not so long ago was a delicate, beautiful thing you enjoyed kissing, but now is just a sort of underwhelming content delivery system. Oh, you had a day at work, did you? Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that does sound miserable. Oh, tell me about it. Tell me all about it. Tell me all about your life in detail forever. On and on burbles their mush cave, talking about stuff that happened to them and things they consider important, sharing their feelings while you just point your face in their direction and hope that your expression doesn't betray your aching isolation and your raging need to just open your own mouth and shout, "Oh, for God's sake, just shut up! Shut up!" And all the while, the emotional rocket fuel that propelled you into this situation in the first place was expended long ago. Now there's no momentum left. So what do? Well, you sit there anaesthetising yourselves together, watching more television. Yeah, staring at the same machine that helped you into this mess. The machine that threw pretty folk at you till your own self-worth was shat through a bin bag. The machine that said true love meant grand gestures and rampant sex, that hammered home the false idea of the perfect soulmate, which a flawed human partner with their toenails and earwax simply doesn't seem to be anymore. Television, the machine that wiped its arse on your Valentines. Once upon a time, television was a new technology itself, and of course, like all new technologies, it was inherently mistrusted. After all, the television was an unfamiliar intruder which squatted in the corner of the living room, demanding the entire family shut up and stare at it. If any of these people could have torn their eyes away, they'd have thought it was sinister. As you might expect, this dangerous new invention had a vested interest in making out technology was a beautiful thing, and it quickly set about showing us wondrous visions of the world of tomorrow. Optimistic programmes like Tomorrow's World gleefully coughed up new and bizarre visions of a glittering future full of automated dial-a-drink pubs, cuddly death machines, jet-powered hoverloos, chessboard skin transplants and sleek futuristic magic cars which would let middle-aged men impress swinging, hot-panted dolly birds with their accessibility and extreme comfort. And of course, this future was peopled by plenty of clockwork slaves.
Introducing Mabel, the robot housemaid.
The common assumption was that we'd become a nation of robot-owning layabouts who delegated all our domestic tasks to some sort of motorised Jeeves. Of course, the march of progress was lent an extra frisson by the very real space race between Russia and the USA, and as we hobbled towards our giant leap, TV was keen to lob all manner of spacey imagery at the viewer. As Neil Armstrong and his buddies prepared to cram inside a big tin dick and blast off into history, Tomorrow's World showed us what the moon base of tomorrow would look like and how it would work.
There'll be a daily shuttle service where 300 passengers at a time will reach Moon City after a 5-day journey from Earth.
Liars. while Blue Peter turned into a protracted NASA press briefing with wide-eyed items detailing virtually every aspect of space travel. It was clear mankind was going to have a great time of it. Space was going to be all ours. We'd own that shit like an empire. Then the night itself arrived, billions around the world huddled in front of their televisions, and then thrillingly, while a global audience of billions watched with bated breath, man set foot on the moon.
But what is that?
First man on the moon, eh?
For a while, space exploration was groovier than ever, celebrated in shows like the fast-paced alien-busting thriller UFO, which showed we freaky, far-out humanoids conquering an endless wave of extraterrestrial vandals, hurtling toward the planet like annoying metal wasps. But away from the televised fiction, we kept returning to the moon in reality.
And what did we discover? Well, we discovered that space exploration was a letdown.
For one thing, there wasn't much to do on the moon. There wasn't even a Nando's. We'd spent billions sending astronauts there just to piss around.
I was strolling on the moon one day in a merry, merry month of December, May.
And furthermore, when you stood on the moon and looked back at Earth, our planet now looked worryingly fragile.
Having mounted a lengthy PR campaign in its honour, TV now started to wonder whether progress was such a good thing after all. And as the years slid by, things remained resolutely grim up tomorrow with shows like Blake 7, a grit-toothed We're All Gonna Die space opera from Dalek creator Terry Nation. This was an epic tale of political exiles perpetually on the run from the evil Federation. It was a miserable existence. Space itself was a washed-out dystopia of brown and grey hexagons, where the highlight of your day was finding a war memorial in a quarry.
Some sort of obelisk, I suppose.
During their brief lives, they'd been continually tortured by the technology that was supposedly assisting them. The chief source of their torment was Aurak, a whirring, winking, smart-ass in a box who loved himself almost, but not quite, as much as an iPhone, and who treated his human companions with the haughty condescension of a professor of Latin snorting at an especially stupid peg.
That information is not immediately available.
Well, can you get it?
It has no bearing on the problem.
Can you get it?
Eventually.
How long is eventually?
It will require time and resources far in excess of the value of the information.
Well, get it anyway. I want the reason for that alert.
Very well. I will report in due course.
Jesus, even Apple computers aren't this snooty. Once upon a time, computers were so unwieldy and complex, merely switching one on required an army of dweebs acting like they were operating a nuclear submarine.
OK, Peter, the keys are in.
Right, keys in. Can you check this oil level, please, Harry?
Oil OK.
Right, can you check disk temperatures, please, Malcolm?
OK, disk up to speed.
Hello, alternator house. Disk oil and temperature OK. Is it OK your end?
OK for standby.
Switch on standby, Peter.
Standby coming on. OK, HD coming on.
The computer is ready for use.
But by the early 1980s, computers had become so compact and so basic, it only required an army of one schoolboy nerd to operate them.
This is the computer, and what we're going to do is just to go through a simple little program to demonstrate the computer's capabilities.
Microchips were cheaper and more plentiful, prompting a wave of exciting ads about intelligent machines that could patrol your home.
Program in up to 16 commands, and Big Track will advance, turn, and fire 3 blasts.
Man was clearly getting more comfortable around his machine helpers, sometimes suspiciously close, as in the silly high-tech fantasy Knight Rider, in which pube-head hunk and future one-man irony empire David Hasselhoff repeatedly slid inside his softly-spoken friend Kit to share flirtatious banter. They were such close buddies, it wasn't so much a will they, won't they, as a where's he gonna stick it.
Not now, Michael. I have a headache.
You know, you've never acted this way before, pal.
I guess so. I've never felt this way before.
By now, real people were inviting real computers into their real homes. As far as telly was concerned, computers were supposed to be for important stuff like spreadsheets and numbers and more spreadsheets and more numbers. But it soon became apparent they were being off-roaded into extracurricular fun activities which challenged the broadcasters for space on the box itself, as enthusiastic early commercials made clear.
Now you can play the world's most popular arcade game in your own home.
What's more, they were so advanced they offered an entertainment experience far beyond just gawping at things.
In television Tron, it's so involving, you'll feel as if you're actually in the movie.
Really?
Before long, a whole range of new entertainment options was available, and trad TV clearly didn't approve.
There's monster games like this one, where you run around bumping off critters or swallowing giant cherries. And there's the Space Invader theme, where you shoot at moving fleets of hostile aliens. Fairly boring. And then there's the more recent sports games. Well, sports games to me are perhaps the most appalling use of computers.
Ever since, TV has routinely portrayed video games as an inherently unhealthy and otherworldly threat which glorifies violence and is probably bad for your noggin.
Children in primary and secondary schools are being spirited away to an obsessive world of habitual fantasy violence.
We now have a World Wide Web page on the internet, so you can access the information yourself if you can get onto the World Wide Web, okay? And if you can, this is our address. You need to type in http://www.bbcnc.
Soon, even though some of us couldn't even use a mouse properly, we were coming to rely on computers too much for TV's liking.
Experts are warning that it may already be too late to prevent millions of computer systems breaking down at the turn of the century.
Frankly, there will be some people who will not survive the coming of the year 2000 simply because they failed to take action now.
With the millennium looming, it was clear mankind hadn't heeded TV's warnings about the danger of machines, and now there was this inbuilt Achilles heel that was certain to kill us all.
Cash points would take your arm off, planes would plop from the heavens like 500-ton sky turds, and nuclear power plants would microwave the continent.
Nobody knew precisely what would happen, but they knew it would suck.
Come Millennium Eve itself, TV gleefully wheeled out some of its most trusted presenters to stand in front of a rotating globe and look on in horror, live, as computers destroyed our world. But in the event, the only thing that seemed to be really affected was Peter Snow's auto cue.
So far, it's cost us about £250 billion to take on the bug. And that's the way it's been. 250 billion pounds has cost us.
Soon it became apparent that computers weren't going to annihilate us after all, and TV had to reassess its relationship with technology. If it couldn't beat it, it would have to absorb it. What TV needed was to become more like a computer, a machine which did what you wanted, a machine that was interactive.
One interactive format that utilises both the phone and the television, and is new, is the Penance Channel. You know, the Penance Channel.
Mrs. Daniels, can we have a statement from you, please? No statement. Mrs. Daniels.
I'll send it to spare.
Ryan Daniels, seen here leaving court today, is the first teenager in Britain to be sentenced to 24 hours televised humiliation. Daniels spent months terrorising residents on Tooting's Ganymede estate. Today, a judge sentenced Daniels to appear on the Home Office's controversial Visible Punishment TV channel for 24 hours. While on air, Daniels will have to obey instructions tweeted and texted live by viewers, no matter how humiliating. The Community Payback Network is currently broadcast on cable and satellite, with plans to expand the coverage to Freeview later this year. Politicians hope this is a step forward. It's certainly proving popular with viewers. In his first 8 hours on air, Daniels had to begrudgingly carry out over 1,500 of their suggestions before being hospitalised for paint inhalation. Karenitis, South London.
Today, TV doesn't just mimic the interactivity of computers, it also mimics the unreal visuals of video games. On TV, this techno-magic blurs the line between fact and fantasy. Insanely clever visual effects like these are now so commonplace, even commonplace scenes are no longer real, and you won't even notice. We're surrounded by everyday miracles. No wonder life as a whole is starting to feel like a technological dream.
We just take everything for granted now. When you first encountered Wi-Fi, it was like magic. Now you'll moan like an oppressed dissident if you can't get a 20 meg download speed on your novelty teaspoon.
Nothing seems real anymore. Look what's happening. I mean, just look at it. What's that? What the hell is this? And what in God's name is that? Little wonder we now just blithely assume anything's possible.
Every day a new stunning breakthrough. Oh, right, yeah. What, holographic television? Oh, OK. What's that? Internet milk? Yeah, don't know what that is, but yeah, it figures.
Consequently, when modern TV casually exaggerates what technology can achieve, the audience just swallows it. CSI is set in the present day, but demonstrates technology from space year 3000, yet no one thinks it's sci-fi.
Yeah, it's a cell phone. Okay. We should work backwards. We should do the most recent phone calls first.
Looking at this, it's no surprise you can show real people something as impossible as the time phone, a handset that lets you make calls through time, and they'll simply believe you.
It allows you to call yourself in the past, so you can remind yourself about keys or just have a conversation with yourself. What do you think about that?
I like that. I think that's pretty good, you know. So I can call myself back in time and have a conversation with myself. See, I like that.
Technology is amazing and it's everywhere. It's impossible not to gawp at it. Having been conditioned to surrender our attention to the lone, glowing screen, suddenly we're surrounded by thousands of the shimmering. It's like invasion of the gleaming rectangles. Pop a screen in our eye line, and no matter what we're doing, we're hopelessly drawn to the light. Never mind apes. We must be descended from moths. All these screens fighting for our consideration has knackered our attention span. Who can spare the mind space to focus on something as static as a book anymore? Hardly bloody anyone. Maybe the problem isn't progress, maybe the problem is us. We seem to have a knack for reducing the most incredible inventions to their basest level almost overnight. Take radio. We created radio. A nation spoke unto nation.
The German radio has just announced that Hitler is dead.
For a bit, and before long, breakfast shows.
So like then it went up my bum.
It went up your bum?
Up my bum, yeah.
Right up your bum?
Yeah, right up there, right up my bum. Up my bum it went. My bum's where it went, right? And it went right up there.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, here's Rihanna with Umbrella.
Television. We managed to drag that from I, Claudius to the Jeremy Kyle show in the blink of a generation. The internet, the most incredible method of communication ever devised, and we use it for swapping funny photos of cats. Smartphones. With a smartphone, you could browse through the contents of the most incredible art galleries in the world, all in the palm of your hand. Yeah, you could do that, or you could download a novelty app that makes it emit the sound of a farting duck. In summary, TV claimed progress was a great thing, predicting a world in which we'd relax in front of screens while computerised slaves did our bidding. But now the future's arrived, and those screens relax in front of us while we converse through them, lose our bleeding rags at them, and jig about like desperate jesters for their computerised approval. And the screens have left us marooned here in the future, surrounded by magic, unable to focus on anything that doesn't light up and go beep.
However, based on solid research, we found that reduced viewing of TV helped many people develop their potential to become successful individuals that benefited society. Consider the interesting biography of renowned neurosurgeon Benjamin Carson and how television affected his life. Benjamin Carson was born in Detroit, Michigan. His mother, Sonia, had dropped out of school in the 3rd grade and married when she was only 13. When Benjamin Carson was only 8, his parents divorced and Mrs. Carson was left to raise Benjamin and his older brother Curtis on her own. She worked at 2, sometimes 3 jobs at a time to provide for her boys. Benjamin and his brother fell farther and farther behind in school. In 5th grade, Carson was at the bottom of his class. His classmates called him dummy, and he developed a violent, uncontrollable temper. When Mrs. Carson saw Benjamin's failing grades, she determined to turn her son's lives around. She sharply limited the boys' television watching and refused to let them play outside until they had finished their homework each day. She required them to read 2 library books a week and to give her written reports on their reading, even though, with her own poor education, she could barely read what they had written. Within a few weeks, Carson astonished his classmates by identifying rock samples his teacher had brought to class. He recognized them from one of the books he had read. It was at that moment that I realized I wasn't stupid, he recalled later. Carson continued to amaze his classmates with his newfound knowledge, and within a year, he was at the top of his class. The hunger for knowledge had taken hold of him, and he began to read voraciously on all subjects. He determined to become a physician, and he learned to control the violent temper that still threatened his future. After graduating with honors from his high school, he attended Yale University, where he earned a degree in psychology. From Yale, he went to the medical school of the University of Michigan, where his interest shifted from psychiatry to neurosurgery. His excellent hand-eye coordination and 3-dimensional reasoning skills made him a superior surgeon. After medical school, he became a neurosurgery resident at the world-famous Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. At age 32, he became the hospital's director of pediatric neurosurgery. The key theme that we should realize is that by Benjamin's mother's dedication to reducing and even eliminating the need for watching TV, he was able to develop his mental capacity and grow as a productive student. By eliminating television, the child has the great ability to develop in other areas of life that are vital to his or her skills as an adult. Every human being has the potential to significantly benefit society by sound education and the aptitude for excellence in all areas of life.